customer states we keep getting a check engine light here, and the code it stores is a cylinder 2 misfire. But he says it seems to always run completely fine. He never notices anything with it. So let's see what's going on with this thing. We got a 2012 Jeep Wrangler here. It's got 91,000 miles, almost 92,000 miles on it. Customer concerns this repeat P0302 misfire on number 2. I've not driven it, but they say that it never really seems to feel like it has a misfire. But if we look at our misfire counter, it's always counting. Now, some of you Chrysler guys can tell me, but why does it say global disabled, but yet it's counting? And then sometimes I've seen this say in progress and it not count, but clearly have a misfire. Like, I don't understand how Chrysler does this. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But right now, the engine's running. It feels pretty smooth. We're not having a bouncing tack or anything. It'll rev just fine. Doesn't really seem to have a misfire. So at least doesn't feel like a dead misfire. So is it really even misfiring? Is it misfiring on cylinder 2? Not real sure. I thought when I first looked at it, maybe that global disabled thing, maybe it means it's disabled the injector, but it's not. If I go into my engine data here, the injector was still firing a minute ago. So let me get down here and see if it still is. Yep, injector 2 pulse width. See, it's still firing. There's all the other ones. So injector 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So all the injectors are firing. If one of them was turned off, that would be a really low number, like close to 0. But all the injectors are firing. It feels completely fine right now, but it's counting a misfire. So what would you guys do here? Well, I always start off misfires with just a relative compression, just an audible one. I just like to listen to it by ear to see if I can hear anything. So let me take my microphone. I'm gonna stick it out under the hood and do just a clear flood mode, where you just take the gas pedal and you just push it all the way to the floor, spin it over. This engine will do a clear flood. Not all vehicles will, but this one will. So let's do that real fast. Just gonna lay you guys on the air box here so you can hear. What do you guys think? Definitely sounds like a mechanical compression issue, doesn't it? That uneven cadence, that like, it's definitely got something mechanical, compression wise, going on with this engine. So let's do this again with a scope and actually see what's happening with their compression. Alright, so to do a relative compression with a scope, It's pretty simple actually, and this works on pretty much anything that'll do a clear flood. Chrysler says no, you can't do it this way, but I'll show you kind of my standard route of doing this anyway. I would do a battery, just positive and negative. So my channel 1 is battery positive, and then my reference ground. My channel 2 would be on like ignition number 1 control. And I've got the engine running, so we can see the ignition is hooked up, it's working. You can see right here, there's my burn line. She looks good. So on the scope, this is how I would normally do it on pretty much anything like Chevy, or anything that'll do a clear flood. I'll do ignition 1 sync, so basically I can see which cylinder it is that's got a compression problem exactly, and then I'll also have my battery voltage. You can do it with an amp clamp. Battery voltage works just fine. I do think the amp clamp usually will give just a little better picture, and it's a lot less setup scope wise that you have to remember, because you just put the clamp on there and go. So, but battery voltage works just fine. So let's show you how to do the battery voltage setup. So on the snap-on here, let me try to get it where the glare is not as bad. On the snap-on, and this is same with Pico and everything like that. On my channel 1, which is battery voltage, you see I've got it set to 10 volts. If I change it to 20, you can see there's my line. We can see that we're charging. If we go to our live voltage here, 14.4. So on our settings here, one thing that's going to be the biggest thing is AC coupling. Pico calls it the same thing, AC coupling. So we're going to change this to AC. So now we're looking at AC voltage. So if we go back over to our live, you see we're at 0 volts. That's because the signal isn't changing. That's a good thing. If we've seen a change right here, it means we have an alternator issue, but we don't. And then we've got to change the scale, because we're going to be looking at the voltage dropping on the battery as the starter pulls current out of the battery. I usually find that 2 volts works pretty well for this. Sometimes I might have to adjust down more. It really depends on just how strong the battery is, how much current the alternator pull, or not the alternator, the starter pulls, and things like that. So I'll just always start with 2 volts and kind of adjust from there if I need to. So we've got a sync here, and then we've got our AC coupled battery voltage signal here. In time base, I think 10 milliseconds is usually a good one. That gives you 2.5 seconds on the screen here for a snap-on. If it was a Pico, I would be doing probably like 2 seconds per division or something like that. But since we're doing the snap-on, we're doing the 10 millisecond time sweep, which basically gives us 10 milliseconds on the screen here. So if I stop this and zoom out, so let me show you that again. Let's record. So we got our 2.6 second buffer here, because Snap-on does it in a buffer. Alright, if we changed this to 20 milliseconds, you see our buffer time here is going to be a little longer. So we might actually go with this for now. 5 second buffer, that's pretty good for a relative compression. So if we hit stop, and then we hit, keep in mind right here we've got 20 milliseconds on the screen. This is only 20 milliseconds. So if we hit zoom out, we see this entire buffer. Okay. I don't know why it's saying 2.6 there, but this is the entire buffer. You can see each ignition event, and we can see the AC voltage in the charging circuit, which is very little. If we see our scale, we're at 0. It's probably maybe like 100 millivolt swing. So I like to just take my voltage and move it up, get it a little more centered, because we're AC, we're going to be going high and low. So I like to get it just somewhere in the middle of the screen here. And there we go. That's the setup. So now we're just going to take the key, we're going to cut it off, we're going to foot all the way to the floor, and we're just going to spin this over, and we're going to capture our current draw, basically shown as voltage. So let's spin it over, and they're actually giving us an ignition waveform. So there we go. Let's hit the stop. Let's hit the zoom out. All right. Now that's a pretty clear compression issue right here. Now, one thing to keep in mind, we're looking at voltage drop as current draw. If you prefer it to be inverted, you could, when you're recording, you can invert it, and it's going to show this more like a an amp clamp would, where current draw would be going up. But we're looking at voltage. So the down points is current draw. So right away we can see this looks like a lot of current draw. Let's zoom in. 64, that's a little much. 128. And now we can see we've got our ignition right here. And a lot of times Chrysler will actually shut off the injector pulses on a lot of their vehicles when you're doing clear flood. I don't know why they do that, but a lot of times that will be shut off. But anyway, so we can see, let's get in a little closer. You can see right here where we have this injection spike, we have battery voltage dropping. So that's the compression. And then released, another one, released, and another one. So you can kind of see how current draw, meaning compression, released, current, released, current. And this one is almost double what the rest of these are. That's a pretty interesting waveform there. But you could count the cylinders off. So we've got ignition, so that'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 again. There's our ignition. So that's a strange waveform, and definitely is pointing to a mechanical issue. Now let's do this all again, and what I'm going to do now, I'm going to actually invert the signal so that it looks more like how an amp clamp would. If you're used to seeing videos or using an amp clamp, it's going to look more like what an amp clamp would. To get this to look more like an amp clamp, what we're going to do, we're going to have to hit record on the Snap-on so we can change some settings. And we're going to do inverted. This is the same with Pico. There's an inverted selection you can do as well. And if all the little noise is a little bit too much, you can also apply a filter. And we're going to keep that 2-volt scale because that was a good scale. It worked perfect, gave us a good voltage range to look at. And that's all we're going to change. And we'll do a capture now with that. So let's clear flood. Give it a few seconds here. And we're gonna hit the stop button. And now let's zoom out. And there you go. See how now our current looks more like a wave, like a amp clamp waveform, where it's going up, meaning more current, drop, more current, drop. All right, so here we are in the 64x zoom. We can see our cylinder 1 ignition here and here, and we've got our compression stroke up, compression stroke up, compression stroke up. You see how this one is a lot higher, basically double. If you look at the amplitude here, this is double, and back down. So it looks like everything has compression, so we're not dealing with a no compression issue. Why does this cylinder have a lot more compression? Well, it doesn't. Almost always when I see this, that's a telltale sign of exhaust valves not opening, or not opening very well. And it's usually on the companion cylinder. So since we've got our sink here, we know that that high compression is on cylinder 3, not 2, which the code is setting a misfire for. So we need to look at number 3's companion cylinder to see what is going on with that. And the companion cylinder to 3, I think the firing order on these is actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the companion cylinder would be 6. Okay, so now how does this make sense for it counting a misfire on number 2? Now, if you look really close, you can kind of see that number 2 does have a slightly lower compression current draw than the others. Well, they have got the valve covers took off of this Jeep, and I'm a little stumped because it is not what I thought it was, and I actually don't know what it is yet. Sorry, the lighting's not very great in here. It's still early in the morning. It's like 6:30 in the morning. Half the lights in here apparently are not liking the cold because they're not wanting to turn on this morning. But they have both valve covers off. First, they got this side off for me, and I stopped by and looked at it, and the cam lobes are completely fine. I didn't see anything wrong with this side. And if I remember right, was number 6 is the one I thought the exhaust wasn't opening because I was showing a high compression on number 3 according to the RC test. So cylinders is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then 6. So I had them pull this side off to inspect these cam lobes. And let me get the light over here. You can see the intakes there, they look perfectly fine. The exhaust, you can kind of see it's fixing to open. It looks fine there. Same with that one. Let me spin this over a little bit. We'll get those to where they're up. To do that, they've got the battery down there. I've got it hooked up to their charger, and I'm back probed into the starter wire here, so I can just take my lead and tap it to it to power and spin it over. A little more, there we go. So there's the tops of the exhaust cam lobe for number 6. Perfectly fine. There is nothing wrong with those. There's no wear to them. Nothing. So that I was really expecting to find those lobes to be just completely worn off due to the cam follower down here basically going bad and wearing the tops off, but it is not the case. There's not one lobe that's got any damage. And if you're not real familiar with these, when the cam followers here start to go bad, the bearing drops in them, and the tops of the cam lobe here will start to wear on the sides. You'll see the little marking on the side right here, not where the bearing rides, but just on the side. And I've not spotted that on any of these at all. All of them look completely fine. So I was like, maybe I missed something, maybe I looked at something wrong. I was like, let's take the other side off and we'll see what bank 1 looks like. And it's all still perfectly fine. So over here on bank 1, we've got cylinder 1 here, and then 3 is here. Get stuff out of the way. You can see the cam lobe here is perfectly fine. Let me spin it over to where we can get those cam lobes up. See, perfectly fine. Intakes. Here's the exhaust. Perfectly fine as well. I mean, all of them are completely fine. There is no abnormal wear on any of these that I've found. But it still has a mechanical sounding compression issue. Still, with it completely took apart, the intake off so it can actually breathe and pump how it should, we still have an uneven cadence. Let me spin it over and just let it run. You can see we're starting to get oil pressure come up through everywhere. But we still have an uneven cadence. It doesn't spin over smooth. Even like when I first was starting it, you heard it kind of before it like continued to spin over. I'm kind of at a loss right now. So I think the only thing to do is get the Pico out. We'll get a pressure transducer, probably go in cylinder on each one of them and just look at compression on each one of them. What sucks though is the intake's off of this thing, so we're not going to get any kind of intake vacuum pocket like we normally would if the intake was still on. But I think we'll maybe see a compression issue. So let me get all the spark plugs out, get the pressure transducer hooked up, and we'll go in cylinder to every cylinder, spin it over, and just get compression waveforms on all 6 cylinders here. All right, so here's the setup. Got the WPS in cylinder 1 right now. We're on range 1. I've done a few little test captures here just to kind of figure out how I want to do this to make it repetitive for every cylinder. And what I come up with was basically doing the scale of 200. And of course I have it picked as being a WPS on my probes here. So WPS 500 and in the range 200 PSI. And then my time base, I'm set at 200 milliseconds. I had to mess with that just a little bit. I want to get one full cycle on the screen. And then I also got a little trigger here. What I'm going to do is basically do kind of the reference waveforms like I've done on the Honda Element video, where I get a capture and then overlay all the others on top of it. So I've got just a trigger here, and I've messed with it a few times, and on the 4th page you can see I got waveform 1 through 4. So this one was when I started, and then page 2 you can kind of see how it fell in line, and my end phase was pretty close here. Go to page 3, that's pretty even, and 4 is pretty even. So once I figured out that page 3 and 4 basically lined up symmetrically, that's kind of the game plan for the rest of them. I'll get 4 pages. By the 4th page, they should be pretty even and lined up. And of course, since we have no intake on here, we have no intake pocket, but we can see when exhaust valve opens, when intake valve closes, so we can get some measurements for that. We'll go about right there. That's about where it starts to pick up at. And then about right there. These are just general. I'm not really too concerned with being perfect on them, because I'm looking at, I want to see the relationship between this cylinder and the rest of them. This is cylinder 1, supposedly it's fine. May not be fine until this right here. It looks a little weird to me. I don't know if that'll come up on camera very well, but how we slope here and then start to dip into the vacuum, that vacuum slope's a little funny looking to me, but that could just be completely fine for how we're having to test this. So I'm not too concerned with it. I'm wanting to see valve timing and compression. So we'll save this as a reference. Go over here, reference waveforms. I'm gonna go off of A, and we're gonna call this one cylinder 1. Yeah. We'll go with the green or the blue color, it'll be all right. So we will let that be there. All right, so now this is saved, and we can grab cylinder 2. We'll grab cylinder 2 next. And then I'll continue down the line until I get all 6 of these. Well, the results are in. It's a little shocking, actually. It's not what I expected. On the RC test, I remember seeing on number 2 a slighter lower compression, but nothing noticeably bad. But the end cylinder tells the truth. Cylinder 2 is low compression, as well as cylinder 4. Not real sure what's going on with 4, but cylinder 2 does have low compression. As far as everything else, you can see most everything else lines up pretty well. Our exhaust pockets are all about the same, other than this number 2 is slower. What's going on with number 2 here? I don't really understand how that made my cylinder 3 RC be much higher as far as current draw. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You would think if cylinder 2 spun faster, it would have a little bit of momentum going into 3, maybe I'm just thinking about it wrong. I don't know. If you know, leave it down in the comments. Tell me where I went wrong with this. But the end cylinder tells the truth. Compression gauge would have found this also. But I thought they told me they did a compression test on it. I could be wrong. I don't know. It's been a busy couple of weeks. Ever since I got back from Colorado, I've been running nonstop, like trying to catch up, and I just can't get caught up. And fixing to be Thanksgiving, so a couple of days off. I'll probably have to work some to get caught up. But either way, what's wrong with number 2 here? Well, I think now we're going to go in cylinder with a camera and see if we can see something going on, maybe piston rings or destroyed cylinder walls, gouged up, blow by compression. Maybe we got a valve seating issue, something like that. I know these things, this one might be one of the ones that has the recall or special policy, whatever they call it, about the cylinder head. Because I remember there was one specifically for cylinder number 2. Ivan's got a video on it, and I don't think the dealer took care of the one Ivan had, if I remember right. This one's probably out of it too, but let's get this thing where piston's bottom, dead center, valves closed, and get in there with a camera and look at this thing. So on all data, I've found the bulletin about the cylinder head leakage, which engines it covers. It could be cylinders 2, 4, or 6. I was thinking it was only for cylinder 2, but 2, 4, or 6. So we might actually have some leakage going on 4 as well, because it's slightly lower compression. But basically they just say do a leak down test if anything is over 25% or greater to basically replace the cylinder head. That is the left cylinder head, and got the camera down in there, got the valves closed, and if this will focus, you can kind of see these 2 exhaust valves look slightly different. This one's a solid white color. This one is kind of a little bit tanned, and it's got all them little pits in it. Let me see if I can adjust this down. There we go. Look at that. To me, that's the problem. That's the valve that is leaking. That is pretty crazy. I didn't expect this from that RC test at all. This is nuts. But we found it. That's the issue. If this would kind of focus right again, that's pretty definitive proof that there is something wrong with that valve right there. As far as the cylinder goes, let's get see if I can get this turned around. This is a little hard to do one-handed. Come on. There we go. There's the cylinder wall. Piston looks fine. Let me try to get this. There we go. Yeah, piston looks fine. Cylinder wall looks great. So it's looking like this thing's just got a bad head. The bulletin does say that it's a extended warranty. Vehicles included in the service bulletin have extended warranty coverage. Come on. And they need to refer to that bulletin there to see if this thing is still covered or not. I don't really remember the mileage on this thing, and it's probably not going to show, yeah, because nothing's really connected out under the hood. I've got it on my pre-scan, so I'll look at that and put it here. But got a bad cylinder head. Now, they could probably take it off, send it to a machine shop, have the valves redone. Whatever. that's up to them, whatever they want to do. Maybe we can have it put back together, take it over the dealership, and maybe they will put a head on it. I don't know how far that extended coverage goes. That bulletin is from 2014. It's almost 2024, so it's almost a 10-year-old bulletin. I doubt they're going to do anything about it, but we'll see. That's the diagnosis, though. The RC test did trick me up a little bit. I don't understand that. But that's part of this job. You learn every day. You're always learning. Tripped me up. So we got back on track. We've figured it out. We have the solution. I'm actually going to stick that camera down into number 4 real quick and see what it looks like. I just thought about doing that. The cylinder 4 exhaust valves look fine. The intakes, if I can get back around to them, they look just a little weird, but nothing crazy. Get it around here. There we go. The edging looks a little different from one to the other as far as like kind of just the carbon buildup on it. I'm not sure if that's an issue or not, but either way, if it goes to a machine shop or has the head replaced, it'll fix number 4 too. If there is a problem with number 4, I don't know, but either way, what a fun one. I like the tough ones. I like ones that kind of trip me up a little bit. Kind of sucks they took all of this apart, but you know, sometimes you just got to get visual on some things, and either way that intake would have had to come off to have done compression testing anyway. So could I have pulled that off, saved some headache of pulling these valve covers off? Sure, but it's also one of those things like where pattern failures of roller followers on these engines kind of lead you in a wrong path sometimes. That's why you really need to have a process and stick to that process and kind of not deviate from it, even though you know there's some known issues. You really need to just keep those in your head, but continue going forward with what you're finding. And realistically, yeah, I probably should have just had them pull the intake, come back, done a compression test on everything, and that would have told us what was wrong with it. But that's how it goes sometimes. We all make mistakes, we all miss things, we all make bad calls. It's just how it is. It happens. You just try to minimize that. So luckily on this, there was no parts fired at it other than somebody put a coil and a plug in it on number 2. So that's it. This thing needs a cylinder head, and then it should be good to go. So thanks for watching, everybody, and we'll see you guys later.